The rain has been falling for 3 hours now. I know because I have been lying here for 3 hours and I have not slept, and the rain has not stopped. And those two facts have become, in the last hour or so, deeply intertwined in a way I don't know. I find it appropriate, maybe, that the night refuses to be quiet, that even the sky has something to say. The tent smells like wet wool, mud, smoke from a fire that gave up 2 hours ago and left just the smell behind as evidence it was ever there. And underneath all of that, something colder, something that belongs to this ground specifically. The smell of Russian earth in November, which is a smell I did not know existed before this campaign, and which I will, I think, carry with me for the rest of my life, whether I want to or not. My boots are still wet. They have been wet for 11 days. I stopped noticing somewhere around day 4, and then started noticing again tonight. For no reason I can identify. The mind does that. It sets things down and then picks them up again when you least need it to. Outside, the wind moves through the camp. The men are quiet, not the quiet of sleep exactly. Or maybe it is. Maybe I am wrong about that. Who can say? I can no longer tell the difference between the quiet of men sleeping and the quiet of men who have simply run out of things to say and are lying in their own version of this dark thinking, their own version of these thoughts. Perhaps that is the same thing. Perhaps sleep and exhaustion become the same thing at a certain point, and the distinction stops mattering. The candle beside me is almost gone. I watch it. A small stub of wax, throwing just enough light to make the shadows move, fighting, if a candle can fight, against the dark, with what little it has left. I find that either admirable or pitiful. I can no longer remember which of those feelings still belongs to me. It is very cold. It has been very cold for a long time. That stopped being a complaint somewhere around the 3rd week and became just a condition, a permanent feature of things, like the color of the sky, like my own name.
Somewhere right now, someone is sitting in the dark. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've got one light on, just one, and the rest of the room is the way rooms get late at night when the day is finally done and there's nothing left that needs doing and you can just be somewhere for a while without it costing anything. I think about that a lot. How many people are doing exactly this right now? Different cities, different time zones, different reasons for still being awake. And yet all of us here in our different darks at the same time. There's something in that I find genuinely comforting, though I couldn't tell you exactly why. Tell me where you are. Drop it in the comments, your city, your time, whatever feels right. I want to know who's out there tonight. Now, dim the lights if you haven't already. Close your eyes if that helps. And let us go back. Back to the tent, back to the cold. Back to a man lying awake in the dark, not so different from you. Except that his dark was 1812 and his tent was somewhere in Russia, and the weight he was carrying was, well, you'll hear it. Let's begin.
I was 26 years old when I first understood that the world was simply waiting for someone to pick it up, not conquer it, not fight for it, just pick it up. Like something left on a table that everyone keeps walking past because no one wants to be the one to deal with it. That is how it felt. In truth, that is exactly how it felt, and I have told myself that story so many times now that I can know. Longer tell whether it was true or whether I needed it to be true, and eventually the needing became the truth. Who can say? It was a long time ago, and the man I was at 26 is someone I recognize only partially. The way you recognize a place you visited once as a child. The shape of it is right, but the details keep shifting. Perhaps I was a fool then. Perhaps I was a fool the whole time and just didn't know it until now. Corsica, rocky, loud, the particular smell of an island in summer, salt and something green underneath it. Something growing despite the rock, despite the wind that came in off the water and didn't apologize for anything. My mother hung laundry in that wind. I remember that specifically. I don't know why I remember that specifically out of everything. But I remember the laundry and the wind and her hands, not her face. I can no longer reconstruct her face the way I want to. I get the severity of it, the general shape, but the details won't stay still. Her hands, I remember clearly. They were not soft hands. She had 8 children. She raised them like a general and fed them like a general, and I think loved them like a general too. Which is to say, completely and without sentimentality, and with very high expectations that were not negotiable. Maybe that is where it started. Or maybe that is just a story I tell. Maybe it started somewhere else entirely, and I have retrofitted the origin to make it feel inevitable. Memory does that. I have mentioned that already. I keep coming back to it. They sent me to France when I was 9 years old, on a boat. Everything that smelled like home getting smaller behind me, and a country I had never seen getting larger ahead of me. And I think I remember. Though I was 9 and 9-year-old, memories are not reliable archives. I remember the cold. Not Corsican cold, French cold, a different quality of cold, more serious somehow, more committed to the project of being cold than anything the island had ever produced. The other boys at the academy had names that fit easily in French mouths. Mine did not. I heard it mispronounced for years, mangled, softened, turned into something more convenient. And I remember deciding quietly, privately, the way you make decisions at 9 that you don't tell anyone about, that I would make them say it correctly, that I would become something they had to say carefully, had to get right, because getting it wrong would cost them something. It took 17 years. But they said it. The academies, the years of study. I was always hungry there. Actually hungry, not metaphorically. Actually underfed and underfunded, and wearing a uniform that fit badly, because it was made for a different kind of French boy. A boy from a family with money and connections, and a name that had been French for generations. I was none of those things. I was the boy from the island who studied harder than anyone else, because studying was the only leverage available to me. The only thing I could do more of than the boys who had everything else. I can no longer remember most of their names. The boys I studied with. The ones with the right names and the right uniforms and the right cold. I remember a few faces, blurry, unattached to anything. I wonder sometimes if any of them remember mine. Probably not. That's fine. Italy was where it changed. No, that's not right either. I changed in Italy, which is different. And I keep making that mistake and correcting it. And I notice I keep making it anyway, which probably means something. The army I was given in Italy was broken, is the word. Broken is the honest word. Underpaid and underfed, and wearing boots that had stopped being boots, and were now just the general concept of boots, held together by the shared belief that falling apart completely would be worse. These were men who had been told to fight and had arrived to find that the telling was the only part anyone had thought carefully about, and yet there was something in them, something I recognized because it was something in me, this refusal, this stubborn animal refusal to accept that the situation was what it appeared to be. I looked at those men and thought, maybe desperation is a resource. Maybe I know how to speak to this particular kind of hunger, because I have been this particular kind of hungry. It seemed to me that I knew that language. For a while, I did. Maybe, who can say now? The victories came, and I want to be honest about what they felt like. Most men romanticize victories in retrospect. I understand the impulse, but in truth the victories felt less like triumph and more like confirmation. Like the world finally agreeing with something I had always believed privately. And the relief of that agreement was enormous and also, I think now, dangerous. Because once the world starts agreeing with you consistently enough, you lose the ability to hear the moments when it quietly stops. I lost that ability somewhere. I can no longer identify exactly where. That is the problem with losing things gradually. There is no single moment to point to. No specific morning where you can say, there, that was it. That was when it happened. It just happens, and then one day you are lying in a cold tent in Russia, and you understand that it happened a long time ago, and you missed it. Emperor. They put a crown in my hands in Notre Dame, and I want to tell you I felt the weight of it appropriately. That something solemn moved through me. That I understood in that moment what I was holding and what it would cost. Maybe I did. Maybe there was a single genuine moment of that. But mostly what I remember feeling was correct. Like a word finally spelled right. After years of everyone getting the letters wrong. That feeling, that specific feeling of correctness. In truth, I think that was more dangerous than any battle I ever fought. Not Russia, not Spain. Not any particular decision or winter. The most dangerous thing that ever happened to me was that the world agreed with me. Too many times in a row, and I stopped being able to imagine it doing anything else. Perhaps that happens to everyone who holds too much for too long. Perhaps none of them see it coming either. Spain was the first time something felt wrong. And I called it something else. A complication, a logistical problem, the stubbornness of a people who didn't yet understand what we were offering them. I said that I believed that, or I told myself I believed that. And by that point, the distance between believing something and telling yourself you believe, it had become small enough that I could no longer reliably measure it. The Spanish wanted us to leave. That's it. That's the whole thing. a people in their own country wanting to be left alone. I understand it perfectly now, lying here, listening to a wind that has no opinion about empires. At the time, I did not have I don't know, the equipment for it. The internal machinery that would have let me hear that simple thing and respond to it simply. I called it a complication instead, and kept moving east. Russia. Someone looked at a map and looked east, and the word just appeared. Maybe I said it first. Maybe the logic of the whole thing said it, and I just agreed. By that point, the empire had its own momentum, its own hunger, and feeding it had become indistinguishable from leading it, and I am not certain I always knew the difference. 600,000 men, the largest military force ever assembled. I believed that then. I still believe it. 600,000 men crossing the Naman River in June of 1812 into a country that was, we would learn, not a country in the way we understood countries. Russia was something else. Something that had been swallowing invaders through sheer indifferent size since before France was France. I knew that want to be clear, I knew that. I went anyway because I had spent enough years being right, that being wrong had started to feel like something that happened to other people, a category error, something the world did occasionally, not something I did. I was 42 years old. I had never learned how to be wrong. We crossed into Russia on the 24th of June, and the first thing, the very first thing, before the battles, before the burning cities, before any of it, was the heat which I mention because no one ever mentions it first, and it should be mentioned first, because it was the first thing that was wrong, the first sign that this country intended to be difficult in ways we had not budgeted for. It was extraordinarily, punishingly hot that summer, and the roads, the Russian roads, if you could call them roads. If the word road implies a thing intentionally constructed for the purpose of being traveled on, turned to dust and then to mud, depending on whether it had rained in the last 12 hours. And the dust got into everything, into the food and the water and the lungs of the horses and the eyes of the men. And soldiers started falling before we had fought a single battle, lost to the heat and the bad water and the sheer grinding punishment of a road that took from us what no enemy yet had. The army that crossed the Naman was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the world. 600,000 men, and Russia simply absorbed us, took us in, kept walking backward and invited us to follow, and we followed because the logic said we had to follow. The logic said that eventually there would be something they valued enough to turn and defend. And the logic was not wrong exactly. The logic was just operating in a different country than the one we were actually marching through. By August, the heat had broken, and what replaced it was not comfort, but a kind of grayness. Gray skies, gray roads, gray faces on the men. That particular color that exhaustion produces when it has been going on long enough that it stops being a condition and becomes a complexion. The supply lines had stretched beyond what anyone had planned for, and the men were hungry in a way that went past the stomach and into something deeper, some more fundamental register of the body saying, "This is not sustainable. This cannot continue. Something has to change." Nothing changed. We kept walking east, and the Russians kept walking east ahead of us and burning everything they left behind. Crops still in the fields, blackened and smoking when we reached them. Granaries set alight, wells filled with debris. Bridges collapsed into rivers that were already turning cold. And the smell of all that burning followed us for weeks. That particular heavy smell of scorched grain and wet ash that gets into the wool of your coat and stays there, and that I can still smell. Lying here tonight, or maybe I am imagining it. Maybe memory has its own smell now. Who can say Smolensk? I thought Smolensk would be where they turned. I told myself, told my marshals, told myself more than I told my marshals, perhaps, that Smolensk was the moment that an ancient city with churches and markets and centuries of accumulated meaning would be the thing they could not bring themselves to abandon. That here the retreat would end and the real campaign would begin, and we would win it and be back in Paris before the cold arrived. They burned Smolensk and kept walking, and the smoke from it was visible for 2 days behind us as we continued east. A dark column rising into a sky that was already beginning, very quietly, to suggest that autumn was not far away. That the air had a new quality to it in the mornings, something with an edge. Something that knew things we didn't yet want to know. My marshals came to me in those ruins. Marat, devout, nay, the finest soldiers in the world. Put, and some of them carefully said, perhaps we stop here. Perhaps we winter here and return in the spring with what we have gained and call it sufficient for one campaign. And I listened to them the way I had learned to listen to cautious counsel, which is to say, I heard the words and considered them and then set them aside because the momentum of the thing had its own gravity by then, and stopping felt from the inside, indistinguishable from admitting something I was not prepared to admit. Borodino, 73 miles from Moscow. September 7th. The temperature had dropped noticeably in the nights by then. You could see your breath in the mornings. The ground was hard underfoot where it had been soft. The horses moved differently in the cold, more carefully, as though they too understood that something had changed and were making adjustments we had not yet made ourselves. The Russians finally turned and fought at Borodino, and what happened there in a single day, in a single field, I will not describe in detail, because some things resist description, and also because I am tired, and the night is long, and there are other things I need to say before the candle goes out entirely. What I will say is this. Somewhere between 70 and 80,000 men were taken from the world that day, and when the field went quiet, in the late afternoon, and the smoke cleared, and we held the ground, we held it, they retreated. By the technical definition, we won. I looked at what winning looked like, and felt something I had not felt before in all the years of winning. I felt the cost of it, not politically, not strategically. I had always been able to calculate costs. Pine means something else. Something that came from looking at a field at the end of a day like that and understanding. In some part of the mind that sits below the strategic mind, that there is a kind of winning that is not distinguishable from losing, and you only understand which one you have done much later. In the dark, in a wet tent, trying to sleep. Moscow was empty when we arrived. not evacuated, empty. The difference mattered. A city of 250,000 people had simply decided to be somewhere else, had taken themselves and their animals and whatever they could carry and left us the architecture, left us the walls and the roofs and the streets and the churches. Everything except the thing that makes a city, which is the people in it. We walked through those empty streets for hours, and some of my men were, I think, more unsettled by the emptiness than they would have been by resistance. Because resistance, you know how to answer, and emptiness just looks at you with your own face. Then the fires started. They had left people behind specifically to start them. Organized, deliberate, their own city, their own streets, their own everything. And within days, the Moscow I had planned to use as leverage, the Moscow I was going to hold until Alexander came to his senses and came to the table. That Moscow was mostly ash, and the smell of burning that had followed us from Smolensk was now coming from every direction at once, and there was nowhere to stand that wasn't downwind of something that used to be something else. I waited 35 days for Alexander to respond, and the cold came in while I waited, and each morning it was a little colder than the morning before, and the dispatches from Paris grew more urgent, and the men who had survived Borodino and the march and the burning cities sat in the ruins of Moscow and waited with me, and the waiting cost us things we could not afford to spend, and Alexander never wrote and never sent anyone, and simply waited in his own capital, knowing with a patience I did not have the architecture to fully respect at the time, that the waiting was winning. He was right. We left Moscow on the 19th of October, and the winter that had been suggesting itself in the mornings arrived in full within 2 weeks. Arrived not gradually, but all at once. The temperature dropping in a single night to something my instruments registered with apparent disbelief. The kind of cold that is not a weather condition, but a physical force, a presence, something with intention. Or so it felt, lying in whatever frozen shelter we could construct each night, listening to the wind move through the camp with that particular high sound it makes when the temperature is low enough. That thin, relentless sound, like something being slowly and patiently worn away. The road back from Moscow, the same road we had marched east on in June, with flags and the forward momentum of an army that believed in itself. That road had become something else entirely in the months between, and the men who walked it westward were not the same men who had walked it east. And I am not speaking only of the numbers, though the numbers were. The numbers were what they were, and I will not say them tonight. I rode past them on that road. I kept my eyes forward mostly. What else was there to do? The candle went out. I don't know when. I was thinking about something. The road back from Moscow maybe, or the Nieman, or nothing at all. Maybe I was just lying here staring at the dark, the way you stare at a wall when the mind has stopped producing organized thoughts and is just running, idling, going nowhere in particular. And at some point the candle stopped, and now there is just the rain on the canvas, and the wind and the cold, and the specific silence of men who have used up most of what they had. I should sleep. I know I should sleep. My body has been telling me this for weeks, I think, maybe longer. It sends the same message every night and every night. I don't respond, and by now the message has stopped feeling like a request and started feeling like something sadder than that. An acknowledgement, maybe. A body that has stopped expecting to be listened to but keeps saying the thing anyway out of habit. The tent smells like wet wool and old smoke and mud, and underneath all of that something colder. Something that belongs to this ground specifically. This particular piece of Russia that did not ask us to come here and will not mourn when we leave. My boots are still damp. They have been damp for... I stopped counting. At some point, counting stopped helping. Have I given up? No. Maybe I can no longer feel the difference from the inside. I know what not giving up looks like from the outside. Forward movement, the right expression, orders delivered with the particular tone that men need to hear from whoever they are following. I can produce all of that. I produced it this morning. I will produce it again tomorrow. But in here, in the 2 inches between my eyes and the ceiling of this tent, where no performance is required and no one is watching, in here what remains is something I am not entirely sure I recognize. It has been a long campaign. That's all. That's the whole sentence. It has been a long campaign, and I am very tired, and those 2 facts don't require elaboration. I keep coming back to a morning in Paris. There were thousands of mornings in Paris. Good ones. Mornings with light and coffee and dispatches that said the right things. Mornings where everything felt like it was moving in the right direction at the right speed, and the empire felt like a living thing, breathing in rhythm with my own breathing. I don't return to those mornings. I return to this one specific morning that was not particularly significant by any measure I could have named at the time. I was at the window. Josephine was somewhere behind me, sleeping maybe, or already up. I can no longer reconstruct exactly. Maybe I am combining 2 different mornings from 2 different years into one morning that never happened exactly as I remember it. Memory does that constantly and without apology, and I have mostly stopped fighting it. The light on the Seine was, I don't have the right word, that color that happens in Paris in early autumn, between yellow and white, when the sun has changed its angle and comes in lower and slower and lands on things differently than it did all summer. It landed on the water, and the water held it, and I stood at that window and I thought nothing, not a single strategic thought, not a calculation or a projection or a question about what comes next. I was just a man at a window, watching light on a river. For maybe 30 seconds, I have been in 17 countries. I have stood in the ruins of ancient cities and walked through streets that were on fire and looked at fields at the end of days that should never have happened. I have been called things men dream of being called. I have been called other things too. What I keep coming back to at 3 in the morning is a window, 30 seconds of being no one. I think I know what that means. I think I have always known what it means. I have just spent 20 years being too busy to let it mean anything. And busyness was the medium I lived in. Busyness was the water. And I kept telling myself I would get to the window later. There would be time for the window later. and later kept becoming now, and now kept becoming this tent, this dark, this cold. Josephine, I don't know why I keep coming back to her tonight, specifically. She is in Paris. The legal facts were settled years ago with the appropriate documents and the appropriate witnesses, and all the formal architecture that civilization builds around its most private losses to make them feel like procedures. I divorced her because she couldn't give me an heir. That was the reason. The real reason. Not a complicated reason. Not a reason that requires unpacking political, dynastic, necessary. I believed that when I did it, I still believe it. Both things are true simultaneously, and I have never found a way to make them sit comfortably together, and I have mostly stopped trying. She had a laugh. I know that sounds like nothing, but she had two laughs. The social one. The one for rooms full of people who expected to be found amusing, smooth and appropriate and perfectly calibrated. And then the real one. The one that came from somewhere she didn't entirely control. Slightly too loud. I gave that up for a dynasty, for a continuation, for a son who would inherit something I built. I have a son now. He is healthy. He is in Paris with his mother, who is adequate in every respect that can be measured, and I cannot lie in here, being honest in the dark, the way you can only be honest when there is no one to be honest to. I cannot tell the difference between her two laughs. I am not sure I tried. I am not sure I stood at a window with her and watched light on water and let myself be temporarily nobody. I told myself there would be time for that later. I can no longer remember the color of Josephine's eyes. I have tried. I close my eyes and I build her face carefully, feature by feature, and I can get most of it, the line of her jaw, the way she held her chin when something had hurt her, and she didn't want to show it. But the eyes won't come. Just a blank, just absence where the color should be. There will be time for that later. There will be time. I think I am falling asleep. That is actually new. Sleep has been something I chase for weeks. Something that retreats when I get close. And tonight it is arriving differently, quietly. From the edges first, the way light leaves a room. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually, from the corners inward, until only the center is still lit, and then that too goes soft and uncertain. The rain on the canvas, steady, the same as it was 3 hours ago when I lay down. It hasn't changed. I have changed, or something has changed. Something has loosened slightly. Some knot that has been pulled tight for months has given just enough that the body is finally willing to consider the possibility of rest. The wind. Somewhere outside, a horse shifts its weight. The sound comes from further away than it should, given the distance. And I think that is probably what the edge of sleep feels like from the inside. The distances going wrong. Sounds arriving from the wrong directions. The outlines of things going soft. I made an empire out of nothing. Out of an island and hunger and 17 years of being the wrong shape for every room I stood in. I made it, and it was real. Whatever the histories say, whatever diminished version of me survives in the books. The empire was real, and the men who believed in it were real, and the mornings on the Seine were real. The laugh was real. Maybe that is enough. I don't know if the canvas moves. A horse somewhere. Someone coughs. Cold. And there is nothing left to do now but rest. Only the wind remains. Only the dark.
He's asleep, finally. after everything. The island, the hunger, the years of being too certain for too long, the 600,000 men, the burning city, the frozen road, the woman whose eyes he can no longer remember. After all of it, he's just asleep. Breathing slowly in a cold tent somewhere in Russia. The candle went out a while ago. The rain is still going. I keep thinking about that window, the one in Paris with the light on the Seine. 30 seconds of being no one in particular. I wonder if he's dreaming about that. I hope he is. If you made it here, if you sat with him all the way to the end, leave a good night in the comments. I want to know you were here. And if these journeys into the dark are something you want more of, consider subscribing. There are other rooms, other nights, other exhausted people with too much to carry and nowhere to put it down. We'll keep finding them. For the next little while, just let the rain stay. Whatever you brought with you tonight, whatever it is that's been sitting on your chest, you don't have to solve it right now. You don't have to be anything right now. Just breathe, sleep well, and let history fade away. Still with us? Good. I wasn't entirely sure. It's been a long night and a hard one, and some of what he carried was heavy to sit with. But if you're still here, still awake, still in your corner of the dark, leave a in the comments. Just that. Just so I know you were here for this part, that you didn't drift away somewhere around Smolensk or Moscow or the frozen road back. A small sign. That's all. In this moment when you feel alone tonight, please don't forget this. Many great figures throughout history walked the same path you're on now, faced challenges just like you, and persevered with patience. That's why we remember and cherish them. Perhaps one day you too will become someone we admire and cherish in history. Believe in yourself and never underestimate your worth. Good night, my friend.